Throwaway for obvious reasons, since some coworkers use Reddit. I've, female, 27, been having issues with a handsy coworker, male, 32, and I'm freaking out about what to do. So, I've been working at this medium-sized tech company for almost 2 years now as a marketing specialist. My performance reviews have always been good. Like, I've never gotten below exceeds expectations, which I'm kind of proud of, to be honest. The job was pretty great until about 6 months ago when this new senior product manager named Mason transferred to our branch from another location. When he first joined, I was actually excited because everyone kept talking about how innovative he was and how lucky our team was to get him. At first, Mason seemed totally normal and professional, but within a few weeks, I started noticing some weird behavior. He would casually touch my shoulder during conversations, stand way too close during meetings, and brush against me when passing in hallways. And it's not like our office is cramped or anything. There's plenty of space to not be touching people constantly. What makes it extra weird is that he found out he went to the same college as my brother, though they were years apart, and now he brings it up constantly, like we have this special connection. "Oh, how's your brother doing at good old State University?" Every single time we talk. It's so awkward and forced. I tried to just create physical distance during our interactions, like I would step back or turn away when he approached. I'm not normally sensitive about personal space. Okay, actually that's not entirely true. I definitely like my bubble, but this just felt off, like he was testing boundaries or something. And the thing is, I've seen him talk to other people on the team, and he doesn't seem to be all up in their personal space. About 2 months ago, I finally got the courage to pull him aside after a meeting and politely asked him to maintain professional distance. I was so nervous, I was literally shaking and probably didn't say it as firmly as I should have. He just laughed it off and said I was being too uptight and that we're colleagues. I don't remember his exact words, but it was definitely dismissive. And then the very next day, he did it again, putting his hand on my back while looking at something on my computer screen. At first, I thought maybe it was like a cultural difference or something, or that I hadn't communicated clearly enough. I tend to be a people pleaser, and sometimes I soften things too much when I'm uncomfortable. I mean, he's been with the company way longer than me, and everyone seems to love him, so maybe I am being too sensitive. So about a month ago, I tried again. This time, I was super direct. I told Mason I'm uncomfortable being touched at work, and asked him to respect my personal space. He acted like he understood but seemed personally hurt, giving me this wounded puppy look. The touching stopped for exactly 1 week. Then it started again, but now with little comments about just being friendly and how everyone else appreciates team camaraderie. Last week, there was this incident in the break room that just, I was pouring coffee and Mason came in. He walked up and stood right behind me, like I could feel him breathing on my neck. Then he reached around me to grab a mug, literally pressing against my back as he did it. I immediately stepped away to create some distance, and he had the nerve to comment that I seemed tense today. I mumbled something about having a deadline, and he offered to help me relax with a shoulder massage. I clearly stated I didn't want to be touched, and he laughed and said I should take it as a compliment. I was so angry and embarrassed I just grabbed my coffee and left. I couldn't even think straight for like an hour afterwards. I finally talked to my friend, colleague Kara, female, 29, about it yesterday. And apparently Mason has a reputation for being handsy with female coworkers at his previous branch. Why did no one think this was important information to share? Like, they just transferred someone with a history of inappropriate behavior to our team and didn't warn anyone. I'm literally getting anxiety about coming to work now. I've started taking different routes through the office and timing my breaks differently just to avoid him. This reminds me of this waitressing job I had during college where my manager would always accidentally brush against me. I never reported it because I desperately needed the money for tuition, and I just kept telling myself it wasn't that bad. I know I should have said something back then, but I was 19 and scared and didn't know any better. I'm considering reporting this to HR, but I'm genuinely scared about how it might affect my career. I know I might sound paranoid here, but this is literally how these things go. The woman reports, and then suddenly she's the problem, not the creepy, touchy guy. Mason seems really well liked by upper management, and he's been with the company way longer than I have. My team lead, Brandon, male 35, has made comments about how Mason is connecting with the team and bringing great energy, which makes me think he wouldn't back me up if I said something. I think I might try one more direct conversation with Mason. But honestly, I'm tired of having to repeatedly tell a grown man to keep his hands to himself. Like, didn't we all learn this in kindergarten? And I don't want to create workplace issues, but I also don't want to dread coming to work every day. I don't know, maybe I'm making a big deal out of nothing. Like when I type it all out, it seems bad, but then I second guess myself because he's so friendly with everyone else and they all seem to love him. And okay, it's not like he's groping me or anything super obvious that would get him immediately fired, but it still feels wrong and makes me uncomfortable. Edit. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thank you all for the validation that I'm not crazy. A lot of people are suggesting I document everything. I started keeping notes in my phone about a month ago with dates, times, what happened. Edit 2. To clarify some common questions. Yes, we have an HR department, but they're known for being pretty useless. When someone complained about the broken AC in the West Wing, it took them 3 months to fix it, so I don't have high hopes for something like this. And no, I haven't noticed him being this way with other women on the team, at least not when I'm around. Edit 3. I really appreciate everyone saying I should just go straight to HR. I'm considering it, but I'm really scared about potential backlash. This is the first job I've had with actual career advancement potential. My degree is in marketing, but I've mostly worked retail until this, and I don't want to be labeled as difficult or not a team player. But I also don't want to deal with this every day for who knows how long. Now for the first update. So a lot has happened since my last post 3 weeks ago. First, thank you everyone for all your advice and support. I read every single comment, and it honestly helped me realize I wasn't crazy or overreacting, which I was seriously starting to believe. After reading all your comments, I decided to try one last direct conversation with Mason, but this time with a key difference. I would record it. I spent like 3 hours one night going down this weird rabbit hole of recording consent laws. Did you know they vary by state? To make sure it was legal. I even called my friend from college, who's now a lawyer, just to triple check that I wouldn't get in trouble. Turns out I live in a one-party consent state, which means I can record any conversation I'm part of without telling the other person. I was super nervous about the whole thing, but I knew I had to do something because the situation was getting worse, not better. I planned everything carefully. I waited until we were in a spot near the break room where people could see us but not really hear us. I had my phone recording video in my jacket pocket, thanks to everyone who suggested documentation. I very clearly told him that I needed him to stop touching me at work, that I'd asked multiple times, and that it makes me uncomfortable. I tried to be super direct and firm, and you guys, his response was honestly worse than I expected. He had this weird smile and told me I was making too big a deal of this, and that this is just how people connect in professional settings. And then, I swear, in the same conversation about him not touching me, he reached out and squeezed my shoulder while saying that it was just friendly. I was so shocked I almost forgot I was recording. Like, did this man seriously just touch me while I was asking him not to touch me? After that conversation, I felt weirdly conflicted. On one hand, I was proud of myself for being direct and standing up for myself. But on the other hand, he seemed so convinced that his behavior was normal that I started second-guessing myself again. Anyway, things got a lot worse 2 days later during our weekly team meeting. It was like he was retaliating for our conversation or something. He kept finding reasons to walk behind my chair and touch my lower back every time he passed. At one point, he even stopped behind me and gave me this unwanted shoulder rub thing. I was visibly pulling away each time, but he just kept doing it. I had positioned my phone on the table angled so it could capture some of this, and I managed to get several incidents on video. A lot of you mentioned gathering evidence, and you were so right. What finally pushed me to act happened right after that meeting. I was presenting some marketing data during the meeting, and Mason kept interrupting me with these unnecessary clarifying questions that felt designed to make me look incompetent. After the meeting ended, I stayed behind to gather my materials and organize my notes. Mason approached me saying I handled his questions well in this condescending tone. Then he put his hand on my lower back while he was talking to me. I immediately stepped away and clearly said, "Please don't touch me." And this asshole laughed and said, "We both know you enjoy the attention." Then he reached out and touched my arm again, even after I literally just asked him not to. I noticed that Julia from the design team saw this whole exchange. Mason just walked away like nothing inappropriate had happened. After he left, Julia came over and asked if I was okay. She told me she'd seen him do that to me a lot and that it wasn't okay. She told me she'd witnessed multiple instances of Mason being inappropriate with me and apparently with others too. With her encouragement, and after showing her some of my video evidence I'd collected over the past few weeks, I finally scheduled a meeting with HR. I met with Paula, our HR director. I was so nervous going into this meeting. I had everything prepared, a written document with dates and descriptions of each incident, plus the videos. You guys should have seen Paula's face when she watched the videos. She went from professional but slightly skeptical to extremely concerned in like 2 seconds. She took the complaint super seriously and immediately launched a formal investigation, which included confidential interviews with other team members. Those 3 days of the investigation were honestly some of the most anxiety-inducing days of my life. Mason was acting so weird, sometimes completely ignoring me like I didn't exist, other times being overly friendly when other people were around. Some of my other coworkers were suddenly being extra nice to me, and I thought maybe they'd been told about the investigation. But I found out later it was because I'd gotten a really good performance review that week. On Friday afternoon, Paula called me back to her office. She told me that Mason had been terminated effective immediately based on my video evidence and corroborating accounts from 3 other female employees who had experienced similar behavior from him. 3 other women, and none of us knew about each other. Paula explained that the company has a zero-tolerance policy for harassment and that Mason had already been escorted from the building. I had such mixed feelings after that meeting, relief that I was believed, guilt about possibly ruining Mason's career, even though I know it wasn't my fault. He did this to himself. Anxiety about how my colleagues would react when they found out. I spent the weekend feeling like the situation was finally resolved and I could move on. I even went to a movie with friends on Saturday and didn't think about work once. Then I woke up Monday morning to 14 missed calls from overnight. 14. 5 were from Mason himself with increasingly angry voicemails. The first one was like, "We need to talk about what happened." But by the last one, he was slurring his words, drunk, saying I had completely misunderstood everything and that I was going to regret making this public. 4 calls were from his close workplace friends, including Brandon, my team lead, who I thought would support me. 3 calls were from unknown numbers that didn't leave messages. And 2 were from HR following up to make sure I was okay. I listened to Mason's final voicemail where he literally said, "Everyone will know what kind of person you really are. And I'm honestly terrified to go into work today. I don't know how to handle this fallout. I feel sick to my stomach and keep second-guessing everything, even though I know I did the right thing." Edit. To answer everyone asking if I've contacted HR about the voicemails, yes, I forwarded them all to Paula this morning before posting this. She said to come directly to her office when I arrive, and they'll have security available if needed. Edit 2. For those asking about my evidence, I have about 8 video clips total. Most are short, 30 seconds to 2 minutes, but they clearly show him touching me pulling away or asking him to stop, and him continuing anyway. The one where he says, "We both know you enjoy the attention," is the longest and clearest. Edit 3. A lot of you are asking if I'm in a safe place. Yes, I'm at my apartment with my roommate. Mason doesn't know where I live, at least I hope not. And no, I haven't responded to any of the calls or messages. Edit 4. Some people are commenting that I should have gone to HR sooner and not tried to handle it myself. You're probably right, but honestly I was scared and kept hoping I could resolve it without making a big deal. I know that sounds dumb now, but I was really worried about my job and being labeled as difficult. I think a lot of women can relate to that fear. Now for the second update. So, it's been 3 months since my last update. Sorry for taking so long to post this. After those 14 missed calls that Sunday night, which still gives me anxiety thinking about, to be honest, I was terrified to go to work on Monday. I barely slept and considered calling in sick, but I knew that would just make everything worse in the long run. a bunch of you commented that hiding would make me look guilty somehow, which I logically knew wasn't true, but my brain was like, they're right. Everyone will think you're lying if you don't show up. I got to the office super early, hoping to avoid people, but I felt so sick the whole drive there. You know, when you're so anxious, you feel like you might throw up or pass out. Yeah, that was me gripping my steering wheel like it might float away if I let go, lol. The office was weird, like uncomfortably quiet with this obvious awkwardness. People would literally stop talking when I walked into rooms. Real subtle guys. Some gave me these sympathetic looks, others were definitely glaring. I tried to look super focused at my desk, but I was honestly just staring blankly at my screen, not even reading anything. First thing that morning, Brandon, my team lead, called me into his office. He told me HR had briefed all the managers about the situation, his word not mine, without sharing specific details or evidence. Brandon was professional, I guess. Like he said all the right things about supporting me and that the company has zero tolerance for harassment, blah, blah. But I could totally tell he was friends with Mason and struggling with it. He kept fidgeting with his pen and wouldn't really make eye contact. At one point, he said something like, "These situations are always complicated," which made me want to scream because no, it's actually really simple. Don't touch people who've asked you repeatedly not to touch them. But I just nodded and did my best professional robot impression. By lunchtime, it was super obvious the office had divided into camps. There were people who thought Mason had been treated unfairly, mostly his work friends, and people who supported the decision, mostly women, surprise, surprise. I overheard these two guys from the dev team in the kitchen saying something about how some people overreact to friendly gestures, and I'm pretty sure they knew I could hear them. The worst part was hearing rumors that I had set Mason up or was just trying to get attention. Like, yeah, I totally love being the center of office drama and having half my coworkers hate me. Dream come true. That was sarcasm if it wasn't obvious. That afternoon, Tyler, Mason's work BFF, confronted me in the break room. I was just trying to make a cup of tea and escape back to my desk, but he basically cornered me by the coffee machine. Tyler asked me what really happened because Mason claimed he got fired just for being friendly. I tried to stay calm and told him I had talked to Mason directly multiple times before going to HR. Tyler got defensive, saying Mason was just a friendly guy who touches everyone as his way of connecting. He thought I was making it into something it wasn't. I asked if he would be okay with someone continuing to touch him after he specifically asked them to stop multiple times. He just said that was completely different without explaining how. Then Julia from design stepped in and asked Tyler if he'd actually seen any of the evidence. Tyler admitted he hadn't, but insisted he knows Mason wouldn't harass anyone. Julia suggested he should wait to judge without knowing the facts, and he finally walked away, but kept giving me hostile looks for weeks afterward. I've always tried to maintain harmony in the workplace, sometimes to my own detriment, honestly. Like I'll stay late to help others with their projects or take on extra work to avoid conflict. So having people actively mad at me was really hard to deal with. I kept second-guessing myself even though I knew I was right. The work environment stayed super uncomfortable for nearly 2 weeks. Mason kept texting and calling me, which I never responded to, but forwarded everything to HR. Some colleagues were supportive, but I think it was mostly because they'd witnessed Mason's behavior themselves. Others clearly thought I was overreacting or making things up. Everything changed dramatically in the 3rd week after Mason was fired. I was leaving work, walking to my car in the parking lot, when Mason just appeared out of nowhere. Like, he was literally waiting for me by my car. My heart basically stopped and then started racing so fast I thought I might pass out. As soon as I saw him approaching, I immediately pulled out my phone and started recording. Thank you to everyone who advised documentation in my previous posts. Mason approached me demanding I tell HR that I had exaggerated the situation. He wanted me to fix what I did by retracting my complaint. I told him clearly that I had nothing to discuss with him and that he should leave. He got closer and started raising his voice about how I was ruining his reputation and destroying his career. I was backing up toward the building when 2 coworkers came out and noticed what was happening. Then Mason grabbed my arm while insisting that I listen to him. I said very loudly that he shouldn't touch me and that this was exactly why he was fired. I made sure to hold my phone, obviously, so he could see I was recording. When he noticed the phone, he got even more agitated. By that point, a security guard from the building had walked over asking if everything was okay. Mason finally left, but as he was walking away, he shouted that I would regret making this public. The whole incident completely backfired for him. HR immediately got a restraining order prohibiting him from coming near the office. And the best part, Tyler was one of the people who witnessed the whole thing. He finally understood the severity of the situation. The next day, Tyler actually came to my desk and apologized. He admitted he had misjudged the situation and was sorry for confronting me in the break room. He said seeing Mason's behavior in the parking lot made him realize there was definitely something wrong with how Mason handled rejection or criticism. Over the following weeks, the office climate gradually improved. Paula from HR told me that after Mason's termination, several other women had come forward with similar experiences with him. Apparently, this was a pattern of behavior dating back years that had gone unreported. I guess people were afraid to say anything until someone else did first, which I totally get. I was terrified too. Then I got this unexpected email from a woman named Nina, who had worked with Mason at his previous company. She told me he had left there under similar circumstances, but it had been covered up with an NDA. Finding out I wasn't Mason's first victim I don't even know how to describe it. I felt sick, but also relieved that I had been the one to finally report him with evidence that couldn't be dismissed. About a month after the parking lot incident, I received one final voicemail from Mason. It was surprisingly apologetic. He claimed he was seeking counseling and working on his issues. I'm still pretty skeptical about his sincerity, but at least he stopped contacting me. The craziest thing happened 3 months after all this went down. I got a promotion that I'd been working toward for ages. According to Julia, who's now a team lead herself, Mason had actually been blocking it behind the scenes. Apparently, he'd been telling management that I wasn't ready whenever my name came up for advancement opportunities. Finding that out made me furious all over again. Looking back on this whole experience, I won't lie. Standing up for myself came with a personal cost. There were days I questioned if it was worth it. Days I cried in my car during lunch breaks. Days I seriously considered quitting just to escape the awkwardness. But I have absolutely no regrets. And the weird thing is, going through this made me realize I'm actually stronger than I thought I was. I've started a small, informal support group for workplace harassment that several colleagues have joined. It's nothing official, just a safe space to talk about experiences and strategies. And our company has implemented comprehensive new harassment training that, according to Julia, uses anonymized elements of my situation as examples. Most workplace relationships have returned to normal, but there are still some colleagues who seem uncomfortable around me. I don't think it's because they don't believe me. I think it's because my experience forced them to confront similar situations they'd ignored or normalized in their own careers. That's not my problem to fix, though. Anyway, that's my final update. Thanks to everyone who gave advice and support through this whole mess. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that documentation is everything when dealing with harassment.